Good evening from Manchester, New Hampshire. I'm Chris Hayes. It is one day after the conclusion of the third presidential impeachment trial in American history, and the first ever bipartisan vote to remove a sitting president. We are 5 days away from the beginning of actual primary votes, not caucus votes, being cast right here in New Hampshire. But today, as we sit here, the stakes of who will be the leader of this country were very clearly outlined by the president himself. A day after he was acquitted of abuse of power, President Trump started the day by attacking Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi and Senator Mitt Romney at the National Prayer Breakfast, and then convened what he called, quote, not a news conference, not a speech, but rather a, quote, celebration. In reality, it was more akin to what President Donald Trump sees as, well, the real State of the Union. The event was a free-form, 63-minute airing of grievances, like a rambling toast from a bitter patriarch at a feud-stricken family wedding. The president attacked Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, Congressman Adam Schiff, former FBI Director James Comey. He also attacked the FBI. He relitigated the 2016 election. He said with a straight face his children would, quote, make a fortune if they behaved like Hunter Biden. He spent nearly 5 whole minutes describing in great detail the attack that nearly killed Congressman Steve Scalise, saying the congressman, quote, set a record for blood loss. Trump bounced from topic to topic with no clear plan or train of logic. He really have not seen one of these in quite some time. And ironically, that's because for the past 3 weeks, the president has been publicly represented by well-paid, polished, white shoe lawyers explaining his behavior in a mostly coherent and generous way. Donald Trump was not going out rambling before the cameras like this. He was not giving testimony under oath himself, God forbid. But today he was out there talking for himself. I'm going to play a small snippet of what today was like. Warning, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
A woman who became a star. We have a couple of women that became stars, you two. And I always liked the name of her, I liked the name, Lesko. I liked it. That's how I picked it. I liked the name. I saw that face. I saw that everything. They gave me cards. She had like 7 opponents, right? And you have no idea how much the public appreciates, how smart, how sharp you are. This I can't tell. I can't tell. They just said, she's really good. She's really talented. I said, let's go.
I don't honestly know what he was talking about there. An endorsement for Congresswoman Lesko, which he apparently just picked based on her face and name. Trump also made sure to thank Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Congressman Devin Nunes and all the other Republicans who helped him cover up his misdeeds. The President of the United States then publicly solicited tributes and praise from those in attendance, exhibiting behavior, well, wholly unbecoming of the leader of a representative democracy. Here is Congressman Mark Meadows bending over backwards to show his undying allegiance to the president.
Jim Jordan, did you want to say something? Go ahead. Huh? Mark?
No, I wanted to say that this reflection today is a small reflection of the kind of support you have all across who got your back.
President Trump showed exactly what we can expect from him for the next 271 days until Election Day. He lashed out the people trying to protect our institutions and brought the Republican Party even further under his mortifying control. It remains the question of the year whether the majority coalition of Americans opposed to this presidency will essentially exercise their democratic right and whether they will be able to do that unfettered by literal election meddling, something the president has repeatedly encouraged and solicited. Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.